We're
So,
rusty.
Bill, today's video is about, Florida is still one of the top retirement states. Okay, we know that people are still moving here, but is it really a smart move to Florida and retire in 2025? There's some pros to it and there's some cons to it, but the cons are kind of building up lately. They're getting more and more cons about it. And a lot of people in Florida, after doing this research for this video, a lot of people are working in Florida, retiring, and moving to places like North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee. And
Hmm.
it kind of makes sense for a lot of people, even for me, living in Florida. Maybe it doesn't make sense for me to stay here. I was planning on staying here. I love the fishing, but
Really?
yeah, really. I mean, if things stayed the way they are, I don't know, but we'll see what happens. But anyways, that's what we're talking about today. You know, if it's smart, dumb to retire in Florida, who knows? But in the meantime, if you like this kind of content, consider subscribing. But let's talk about a few facts, okay? Florida did gain 44,504 net retirees ages 60 plus, okay, in 2023 alone. Okay, the most from any state. Okay, well, 2025 studies, Smart Asset is where we got that data from. 21.7% of Floridians are 65 plus older, and that's from the census. A lot of reasons why people move here is Florida has no state income tax. It does not tax Social Security, retirement accounts. I mean, we go on a list of reasons why retirees want to come here. Because of the warm weather. That's like the biggest thing. People are like, hey, you know what? I don't want to shovel snow anymore. I just want to go. That's one of the reasons I left. It was because I love fishing, and I didn't want to deal with snow anymore.
Right.
But
That makes sense.
I mean, there's catches. So let me ask you the first question, Bill. You've been showing a lot of houses lately. Okay, are people older, retirees, first-time buyers? What are you running into?
It's all over the board, to be honest with you. But like a lot of people lately they're relocating here. They're still working, but they're relocating, getting settled in with the intent of this is where they want to retire.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, so I've got a couple people that we're working with right now that's what their plan is. This is, they're getting closer to retirement. And so they have opportunities to move here, and that's what they're doing. And they're looking for, a house that fits their more retirement needs versus their work needs.
Yeah, but what are some of the difficulties? Like, I've talked to a few retirees, when we were talking about this video and stuff, and a lot of retirees want to go into condos, okay? But you know what's happening with the condo market, but the HOA cost is just going through the roof. Insurance is going through the roof. And a lot of them are the same because of HOA fees and because these retirees are on a fixed income, a lot of them are, you know?
Right.
And the problem is in Florida, you can't really, this is my opinion. You just tell me if I'm wrong. In Florida, you can't really budget on a fixed income because prices are so dramatic change year over year. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, you're talking like all the assessments for the SERS reports and things like that,
Right.
a lot of these condos, have, particularly on the coast. So, but if you're looking at Florida as a whole, that's a different story, So I know we tend to gravitate towards the issues that are surrounding all of our coastal condos, but there's condos everywhere outside of just being on the beach, and there's newer condos. So those are some things that you could look at where if you purchased a condo that was the 3 stories and up, make sure it's a newer condo. And, you're kind of all the rules still somewhat apply when it comes to, the budgets and everything, because everybody's kind of under that umbrella. But a newer condo is not going to be subject to all those engineering reports and getting caught up, if that makes sense. They're not going to have to catch up, which is where a lot of those assessments came in. And then now that all the not all, but a majority of buildings have actually gotten caught up. Some of those dues are coming backwards.
Sure,
Although
I heard that too. Yeah.
yeah, but we did have an extension because not every condo got caught up like they were supposed to over that 5-year period that we had. So just be careful if you're looking at condos and make sure that there's not any other big assessments coming and that they have been working. Any good quality property management company and board for these condos, they should have been working at this for the last 5 years. It's not been a secret.
Right. So I mean, so basically, who is a good candidate to retire in Florida? I mean, the research I did says retirees using tax savings to offset housing costs. The housing costs, insurance. People who value the outdoors more, like are into fishing, golf. That you can't get that as much in other areas. But at the same time, who should be cautious? People on, like I said, fixed income. Older condos that you were just talking about, just anyone sensitive to extreme heat, and are worried about hurricanes. I mean, those people, Florida might not be with them and stuff like that. But, you know, so what kind of advice can you give a retiree to coming into Florida when it comes to housing? And say that somebody's on a fixed income, because believe it or not, most people that are retiring, have a limited amount of money they can spend every month. So what
Well, it
what
depends.
what would your
It's
advice be to them?
it's hard because there's so much. Are they coming from the baby boomer era where they've been in the house for 30 years, they've sold it, they had no mortgage, and then they have cash to buy something, so that stabilizes their income from a fixed standpoint. Then you don't have quite as much to worry about. You just you're paying your taxes, et cetera, and you're moving forward, and that's the end of that. If you're having to get a mortgage or a portion of a mortgage, that's a different story. If you're going into a condo, like a beach condo, you're going to have to, obviously, the things that we've talked about previously here. And then if it's a newer condo, is it the lifestyle that you want? But there's also more than just condos. I mean, there's these planned developments that are catering towards, the 55 and up crowd, the retired crowd, so on. And, they have activities and all kinds of stuff there. So it depends on the lifestyle that you want.
But do you think
like
that
the Villages is an example.
yeah, but do you think, they should rent for the first couple of years? You think they should compare, insurance quotes from different buildings, HOAs,
It depends. I mean, that's part of the buying process. If you're moving here and you've never stepped foot in Florida, I don't know. I mean, just me. I don't know if that I would buy if I just moved to a new state. Just even me. I wouldn't just move to a new state and go, I'm going to purchase something. And because you're locked in, it's not like you can sell the house and, you could potentially lose some money, and it could be a bad decision if you've never been to Florida. If you've been traveling to Florida and you know the area, you got friends here, family here, what have you, that's a little bit different of a scenario. If you're familiar with the area, which some people are and some people aren't, but, even non-retirees that I work with, they move in and they rent for a year, or thereabouts before, because they want to get to know the area. They don't know where they want to live yet. Just driving around a few days is not going to cut it.
I mean, think about it. The average Florida home value is about 382,136. That's down from, year over year by almost 4.8% if you take all the areas. Okay, that's from Zillow. Okay, I got that information from Zillow. The average homeowner's insurance in Florida is about $5,728 for the average $300,000 dwelling. I mean, but they're taking like Miami compared and Jacksonville and all the areas and, combined.
Yeah, you're doing an average. Coastal properties, regular properties.
Like flood insurance, the average is about $865 a year just for having, even if you're not in a flood zone, like Citizens, what they're requiring flood. So you got to take all that stuff into consideration. And, you're retiring in Florida. So if you're planning to buy, and tell me if this, I think if you're planning to buy something in Florida and retire, but only plan to keep it for a year or two or three, you're actually better off renting because you're going to lose just as much money on that house or that condo than you would be renting. What do you
It
think?
doesn't make sense. I don't understand why somebody would buy and then try, unless they're like some fix and flipper type person, but that doesn't sound like retirement to me.
No, but some people are like, oh yeah, I'll go check out an area, I'll buy a house, and if I don't like it, let me go
I'll
buy
just
another
sell
one.
it and lose money.
They're gonna lose money. You might as just rent for the first couple of years, you
Yeah,
know?
I mean, you're not gaining anything unless you've got some money where if you're in the situation to where you can go, oh, I'm going to move to an area for a year or two, and then if I don't like it, I still have enough disposable income where I can turn that property into a rental property
That's a
and it
different
doesn't
story.
affect me, different story. But if that's not your scenario, then, you probably be better off, renting for a little while before you purchase to see if this was a place that you want it to be. Because God forbid you don't like it, that's an expensive mistake.
It's a real expensive mistake because the Florida market, and we listen. I'm not going to be dooms, but we have our ups and we have downs. We had the 2008 crash. We got hurt really, really bad. We were ground zero, and now our market is softening. I'm not going to call it a crash because I know how you are with the word
Well,
crash.
4% is not a crash.
Right. So
Like, come on.
it's correcting, it's softening, but then 6, 7 years from now it could be booming again. So what I'm just saying is you're coming to Florida to retire and you're not sure of an area, I strongly suggest to rent. And I'm a guy that does home inspections for a living, so I would want everybody to buy so I could do the home inspections. Bill sells homes, but hey, listen, that's my opinion. I really do think that you should rent for the first couple of years. What do you think?
Yeah, like I said earlier before, if you're moving here and you think you might sell your house in 2 years, it's financially, that is not a smart plan to think that you're going to sell it. And something you said is like, even before the pandemic, we had ups and downs. We're getting back to, more of a normal market. Yeah, we have a lot of inventory and we've done videos on that, but it's, there's the mentality that you could sell in 1 or 2 years. That wasn't a thing even before the pandemic. You couldn't do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes
You
total
can't
sense.
just roll in and you think, remember the average equity gain on a property in our area here was about 3% per year, but it fluctuated up and down. It's an average over
Right.
a period of time. So if you could kind of figure a safe bet would be anywhere between 2 to 4% equity gain per year. Well, you're not going to get your money back selling your house. It's just
No,
not gonna happen in a year or two.
So, okay, you say somebody says, okay, I'm retiring in Florida. I don't want to take care of a house anymore. I do want to buy a condo. And the reason why we got to talk about condos is because doing this research, a lot of retirees, that's what they're looking for. Somebody that takes care of the outside. So they're looking at a condo or a townhouse, something taken care of, okay? And not every condo structure is created equal. So I want you to talk about the risks, locations, when you're going and saying, all right, I saw a really good condo on Zillow or Homes.com, whatever. I want to go look at this one. What are some other things that people should consider strongly before even looking at the home?
What does the condo offer? Number one, on a amenity side, and that's a lack of amenities or amenities that you want. So if you're never going to use certain amenities and they have, a golf course that's part of your membership, your HOA dues, things like that, and you're in a golf course community and you're paying for that stuff and you don't golf, then it's might not be the best choice to, buy in that community. Let's say you're on the beach and you're in a condo on the beach and, you don't want to evacuate when a storm comes because it's an inconvenience. You have nowhere to go. You have no friends to stay with, but you have to come off the barrier islands and you have to come off the beach. That would be a consideration because it will happen. It doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to get hit by a storm, but we also evacuate the islands because it's an island and there might not be a way to get off at some point in time. Even though we're not getting hit directly, we could still see, effects from a storm that would limit your abilities to navigate the roadways. Those kind of things. Pay for amenities that you want. versus what you don't want. You might be hard pressed to find a community without a pool, but you don't necessarily need to go to a community that's got like 5 pools and golf and, movie theaters inside, and you're paying for these things. Some of these planned communities now are amazing, and they have all this social stuff that goes on that you pay for. But if that's not something that you want, then don't move there. That would be my biggest advice, whether you're buying a townhouse, regular house, or even a villa.
Like my parents, themselves, they're paying a premium. They're on a beautiful golf course that literally their backyard is the golf course that they could, they don't golf in their life at all. My mother collects golf balls from people hitting her house.
Right.
And she has boxes and boxes of golf balls, but they're paying for a premium for something that they never use. And I always said that's a waste of all times,
Right.
But let's talk about a benefit too. One of the reasons to move to Florida, and that's healthcare access. Now, I've talked to, because of my parents, and I have some aunts, that are down here and stuff, and they're in their 80s and 90s even. Mm-hmm. And the healthcare has been pretty good here. Like where you are, like Wesley Chapel, like I think that whole area is that they're building hospitals, long-term care places. What do you think is going to be? What do you think about Florida and long-term care?
Well, I mean, it's obviously it's a sign because they're building so many hospitals, that there's people moving here. They study those demographics, they know what's coming, and they're building houses. They're building those 55 and up communities. They're building a lot of the planned, developments, things like that. So they have to build and they cater to that. And Florida has always been, and I think will always be to some level, a retirement state simply because of our climate. Storms aside, I'm working with another couple right now, and they have a lot of questions about storms. So I did a ton of research on it, and I backtracked all the dates of when we had actual effects from storms.
Oh, that's cool.
It really wasn't. It seems like, because we talk about Florida, but we're not talking about Tampa Bay. Florida gets affected, but not the Tampa Bay area. And then, our last 2 storms were the ones that really, really affected Tampa Bay, not to mention, what was it, Milton, in 17, 18.
Well, yeah, I mean, storms, if you're terrified of storms, you got to deal with it every year, and you got to take them seriously too, because
of course,
the hurricanes could hit anywhere in Florida. But like I said, the reason why they seem, and this is my opinion, why they seem so more devastating is so many people have moved to Florida, especially during COVID.
There's more people here.
We built, before we were like, say 30 feet apart from each house. Now we're 8 feet apart from each house. You know what I mean? It's just we're more consolidated and everybody's more pushed in. And so when there's a storm coming, of course it's going to do more damage because you put more people into a smaller area because everybody wants to live on the coast, West Coast or East Coast. Don't you agree that's one of the big reasons?
Well, we're building too. So areas, just let's take Wesley Chapel as an example. 30 years ago, this was a very small one or two house because it was all ranches, right? Mm-hmm. And a chapel like that. It was the Wesley Chapel. There was a chapel to the west of the river, and that's where it got its name. And that was it out here. So you didn't have the dense population, regardless of space between the houses. You just didn't have 200,000 residents living here. You didn't have every inch of space in the 80s. You didn't have condos like they are now. When I was on the beach, when I grew up on Indian Rocks Beach, in that area over there, they had condos, but not like they do today. Those were all little bungalows all up and down the beach where 1 or 2 people were living in them, not the same footprint of that house, because they would knock those things down. And they were putting these condos up, and they're putting, 200 unit condos in there. So now you're getting it's just more dense. So those people have to come off, and more houses, more everything. Everything's getting developed. Every little stitch. I just showed a house over off Marsh Drive in Tampa, just outside of Oldsmar. Yeah. And they found a little area that just didn't quite get developed yet. and they started building houses back there.
Yeah.
It's every inch is getting built on because there's not that we can't make any more land in Pinellas County, Hillsborough County. So they want to be closer to the infrastructure, not move so far east. So of course things are going to change.
Yeah, and another thing too, I got a phone call from one of my clients, and they got their TIF, basically estimated tax, what's going to be their new assessment, and they just bought it last year, and so now their property reassessed, and they called me because they couldn't reach the real estate agent, and they were like, "Oh my God, Jimmy, my taxes went up $3,000, within a year," and it's crazy because people don't understand the reassessment. So, could you talk about that?
Yeah, that's unfortunate. So the way it works is, and it's weird the way our system works here. I don't understand why we do it this way, but we do. At least the county tax assessor has taken a little bit better stance on it, and they're putting like in big letters, "Your taxes will change." Up on the website now. So when you purchase a house, when you're looking at the taxes, the first year, you're going to pay the taxes at the rate that the seller has. Mm-hmm. The next year will be your reassessment year, and that's when you're going to pay your new rate. So You just have to be prepared for that because we pay taxes in the rear. So that's why the seller, you're going to pay the seller's taxes, and then you as the new buyer owner are going to then be reassessed in the new tax year for your new tax basis. So when you're looking at your tax estimates and things like that on your mortgage sheet, when you're looking and you're doing your budget at your, when you're doing your consultation with your real estate professional, make sure that you're doing it not on the taxes that you see advertised on the platforms like Zillow, Realtor.com, or any of them. The MLS does it too. And if you were like, oh, well, I'll go to the county tax appraiser's office, it does the same thing. You're looking at the current tax rate. You have to plug in the numbers for the purchase price, less, any deductions that you would have specifically.
Yeah, I'm telling you, these people, I don't understand how they didn't know that they're going to get reassessed, and I don't understand why mortgage companies base their what we call ratios if they qualify for a mortgage on the current owners' taxes. And people, when we got these TIF bills estimates, for the new tax year, mm-hmm. Everybody is like flipping down on Facebook saying, "Oh, my taxes went up and my value went down." So, basically, like say you bought your house at $200,000, okay? And then it went up to $400,000. But now the value, say, dropped to $100,000, so now it's $300,000. They're going to increase your rates if you're homesteaded 3%, 2.9, 3%, whatever, until they reach that $300,000. Okay, so your value could have dropped, but your taxes could still go up, or they could change the mill rate. So you got to be aware of that if you're retiring in Florida. That don't base your taxes or your budget on what the previous owner was paying.
Well, that goes for anybody. That has nothing to do with retirement. That's everybody.
Yeah, that's everybody. But we have a 6% sales tax here, and plus the county tax. So like over here in Pasco, I think it's 7%. And the homestead exemption. So let's say you're evaluated at $400,000, you get $50,000, and then there's some qualifying things that you could reduce the value so get taxed less. So Bill, could you talk about that a little bit? Well,
you kind of just did. If it's your primary residence, you have a $50,000 tax deduction. Now you also get different deductions depending on, different statuses, wounded veterans, widows, things of that nature. There's an age one as well. So there's different things that will reduce your property taxes, but they're very, very specific to the individual.
Right. So, talk to your tax professional. We're not accountants or tax professionals, but from what I understand, Social Security and retirement withdrawals aren't taxed in the state. So, that's another benefit, but you need to understand that. You need to understand, okay, we don't have an income tax, but if you're retired, you're really not going to be paying an income tax anyways, We talked about the homestead exemptions, but sales tax could add up, and then people say, well, they're going to get rid of property taxes. and I don't think they're going to get rid of property taxes. Okay, I know people are talking about it on videos, but at the end of the day, they have to get the money from someplace. So where would they get it from? Sales tax or something. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. What do you think, Bill?
We'll see. I don't know. Everybody seems to think that. I've noticed that the videos that I've seen, I mean, it's clickbait. I mean, I get why they're doing it, but at the same token, let's be realistic. Everybody likes to put the pendulum swung so far to the other side. It's ridiculous. What the proposal is getting rid of property taxes if you've paid off your mortgage.
What does it mean if you paid off your mortgage? I don't understand that. I mean, we talked about the other video before, and then like, well, what's the difference if I have a mortgage or I don't have a mortgage? Why would your taxes, because you don't have a mortgage, you don't have to pay property taxes, but I have a mortgage, so I have to pay property taxes? Can you explain that a little bit more? Because
Well, I mean,
I
that's
didn't
what the
understand
proposal
it.
is that the premise of it is that you work for 30 years, 15 years, 30 years, whatever your mortgage note was, and you've stayed in your house and you've paid off your mortgage. You own the land now. You're not basically borrowing against your land, and you own your home outright. There's no money owed to anybody. And because of the surplus that we have, that's where the proposal came in to stop the taxes so that you're not being, it's like you're paying for land. You're still paying somebody for land that you own. That's the premise behind it. That's why they're doing what they're doing. And the proposal that they're proposing is that once you've paid it off, then cool, you don't owe money to anybody else. And it's kind of you own the land outright. Why would you still have to pay for your land? And I get it for
I get it too, yeah.
I get it. Like, okay, let's just not say that even the main proposal is going to be the pendulum swing where it's all your taxes. Maybe it'll come down to a certain specific, a smaller amount of taxes. So at least you're still paying somewhat for infrastructure and things like that, or it's capped at a specific rate. You know what I mean? Because you'll get like a deduction. So you're not paying a ton of taxes, similar to like a wounded veteran or something along those lines. They have a cap. So they're paying some taxes, but it's a very, very, very small amount of taxes.
Got it. All right,
Because
we got to talk.
realistic,
I know we talked about it a little bit, but the weather. If you consider retirement in Florida, you really do have to consider the weather. I know we touched on it, but listen, in 2024, we had $27 billion in disasters, the second highest ever. Okay, and we're right now at the peak of hurricane season, and thank God right now we don't have anything heading towards us, but that could change within a week. So when you budget and you're moving down here, if you're finding a house or a condo or a place, you have to be, depending on where you are, a storm could have a big effects. Like we have some areas here that from last year, the places are still empty.
mm-hmm.
And literally, like you would think, you look at the houses, you're like, oh, did you just have a storm? No, that was from a year ago. So it's crucial, especially if you're on a budget. And I know I keep going back to budget because, like I said, most people that are retiring are on a budget. When I retire, I'll be on a budget. So I wouldn't move to an area that my budget could be blown out. Especially some people, they're living on a budget and they don't have insurance because they can't afford it. It's just too expensive. Not meeting their budget requirements. I talked to them. I said, "You don't have insurance?" They're like,
Mm-hmm.
no, we can't afford it. I said, at least get fire, theft, and liability. And these are people that already had 2 floods. It's just.
If you're going to move to the water, you've got to be prepared for those events. They happen. You don't know when. It might be, what was the last time we had any kind of flooding here, really like significant? Well, we had it in 17 and 2021. Oh, excuse me, 2001. And then in 17, we had some as well. And then there's been different things, more like rain events, and cresting of the river and things like that, more inland, because that happens. But you have to be prepared for those things. You need to know those things. If you're moving into a, like what we call an AE flood zone, you be prepared for that. You know, you could be out of your house for a long, like these houses, some of these houses sat for a year before they got through all the red tape and they had enough contractors to come in and do the work.
Yeah.
You know, it takes a long time. And if you're fixed income and you know, different insurances do different things, but I can't imagine that you're going to be able to afford rent and your mortgage if you have a mortgage, because to my knowledge, mortgages don't stop just because the house is broken. You know, I don't know how that, maybe somebody, a mortgage professional could tell us, you know, chime in and on the comments for us and let us know what the ins and outs of that are. That'd be a good question to have answered.
So look at this. Okay, so I pulled some facts. So I did the thing. Florida ranks number 41 of the best states to retire in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
It was dragged down from insurance costs to disaster risks, you know, and that's from the bank rate. You know, Florida home insurance did fall. Believe it or not, Florida's homeowners insurance fell 9% on average from 23 to 25.
Yep.
But again, one storm could change all that. You know, Orlando, Miami, Tampa, among the U.S. most retirement cities. A lot of people are retiring to Miami and Tampa and Orlando.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, a lot of them are not lasting that long. And now they're trying to sell their house when they bought it at peak, and they're trying to sell their house, and now they're in trouble because they realize, I think retiring in Florida, I think you need family, you need support, you know, because a lot of these people, I'm asking them, why are you moving back? It's like, oh, I got to get back to my kids or something. You know, there's a storm. It doesn't help them, you know, get ready and stuff, you know. It's just, I mean, even Wallet Hub, I was reading an article, and they're saying it's one of the worst places to retire, you know. But you got to do the math. You really, really got to do the math. I mean, there's a lot of benefits. And probably the weather, especially the winter weather, is one of the biggest benefits. But
Yeah.
there's so many things to consider, you know, housing, healthcare, you know, lifestyle, you know, what's your lifestyle? You know, what's your advice? Do you think Florida is right for everybody to retire?
No.
No, right?
I mean, if it was, then the entire country would show up here.
Yeah, but I'm just saying do you think, okay, let me rephrase that question. Do you think every year Florida's getting a worse place to retire?
No, I think it's a hot topic right now for YouTubers in the news because we had the storms, you know. We've always had insurance issues. Yes, it's more money now, but also things cost more money now. Inflation is up, you know, so it's not just a one specific thing. The stuff that certain things I think have changed that were very attractive to people to retire here in Florida, which, you know, is all the things that we've been talking about through this video and other videos. But I still think that no matter what, at the end of the day, like I've always said, just because somebody moves out of that coastal house, you're going to have somebody who wants to move right in.
Yeah.
Because this is the way, I mean, I'm doing these deals. I'm doing a deal right now.
Yeah, and after 2 or 3 years, people forget about the storms until another storm comes, and the whole cycle starts again.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Or it could be 20 years before the next storm hits Florida. Remember, where the impact of the eye is what we've been talking about. That's what made this storm very rare because of the impact to the area. You know, Florida gets hit all the time, but we can't just, you know, we're talking about Tampa Bay, like our specific area.
At the end of the day, my opinion is if you're retiring to Florida on a budget, extremely, extremely cautious. Rent.
Well, if you're retiring to any state on a budget, you have to be extremely cautious, I think. If you're budgeting.
Yeah, but I think Florida, the prices are fluctuating a lot more than some other states. Maybe not California, places like that, but it's just like we have so many things. Like right now, yeah, our insurance is going down. But we could have a storm next week that could do devastating damage, and our insurance could double, or you know, all these insurance companies could go under or pull out of Florida. So, I think picking the location you're going to live is going to determine a lot of, you know, how you live and your lifestyle you live. But anyways, that's just my opinion. Be super cautious. I mean, Bill, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but that's today's video. If do me a favor, consider subscribing. It really does help the channel. It helps the algorithm, really helps us. And remember, if you need a real estate agent anywhere in Tampa Bay, Florida, United States, my phone number is below and there's a link. Send me a text and watch this video over here. I picked it out just for you guys. I don't know if it's going to be here or here, but it'll be here. Bill, do you have anything to add?
Nope. Just make a plan. That's the biggest thing. Don't just dive headfirst in.
All right. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys staying until the end. I know this one was a little bit longer, but it's a very important subject. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. Appreciate it.
See you on the next video. Thanks for watching.